Hey everyone, I'm here. I made it once again, man. I don't know why, but I didn't know if I was going to be able to do this week or not because it's my first week of work from home, so yay. But then also, we're going to the Renaissance Fair this weekend in Ohio to do a pagan group meetup, so I'm like all aflutter for that. And yeah, gonna finish packing for that tomorrow actually before we head out. We're gonna head out the night before and then spend the night nearby and then spend the day at the Ohio Renaissance Fair. And it is Viking Day on the day that we're going. So I'm very excited for that. We're going to get to hopefully participate in a small pagan ritual there. And then I've never been to a Renaissance fair before, so I'm super stoked because I'm going to be in my element. But I'm not really here to talk about that. Before I get to all of that, I still wanted to take the time this week now that we are finally into October. Yay. Sweater weather, spooky season. I'm here for it. I'm all about it. But before we get into that and into the rest of the month, I wanted to just do the live stream for book club really quick and talk about The Healing Power of Trees by Sharlyn Hidalgo, which was the book club pick for September. And not just that, while I talk about this book and what I found useful in it and just kind of give you an overall view and review of the layout, I figured I would also compare it to this other book that I have and have also read and reviewed on the channel by the same author, which is Celtic Tree Rituals. So I thought it would be especially interesting to just compare and contrast the two really quick for you. So let me get comfy here. So yeah, these books are laid out kind of along very similar formats. It's just that the content of each varies somewhat. So with this one, The Healing Power of Trees, it's still mostly about the Ogham writing system, the Celtic Ogham, or like tree language, whatever you want to call it. But it's basically just a series of lines drawn across staves, and each different marking represents a different tree, and then each tree has its then own like associations that kind of go with it. And so it can be used as kind of also an oracle or divinatory system. It can be used as a writing system, and I think much like the runes was originally formulated just to be used as an alphabet, but now it's kind of been adapted more like the runes into modern day magical purposes. So for me personally, I really have always liked to use a combination of Norse runes and Celtic tree alphabet in making my own magical sigils and like protection sigils, and the ones that I draw and use in the house and in and around my house and things like that for protection magic and whatnot. So yeah, it's definitely something that I've just been wanting to familiarize myself with more deeply. So this book starts out with kind of just an intro on what the Celtic Wheel of the Year is, because the book, while also being divided up by each different tree or letter of the Ogham alphabet also corresponds with months of the Wheel of the Year. And here they're using the Celtic Wheel of the Year, which starts with Samhain in October, and then I believe the midwinter is, technically the beginning of the new year, which is why I kind of alluded to this in my book on like Odin and the Wild Hunt, how the period in between those two times is that like liminal period in between the old year and the new, when the Wild Hunt is riding and when the veil is super thin, because yeah, it's kind of this temporal place that exists neither in like one year or the next. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, it goes into very briefly just what the Ogham alphabet is and What else? Kind of talks about just some personal gnosis and personal UPG from the writer, how to use this book, and then it gets into just each chapter being on one of the letters of the alphabet. It does have just some cool charts in it as well for each one. And then also does include the runes, which I thought was nifty. Just a handy dandy little reference guide. And one thing that I also thought was cool about this book is it does, for each letter of the Ogham tree alphabet, give a corresponding rune. So that's pretty cool, considering that I already like to use both. And then it does make note that by using the Celtic Wheel of the Year, it's also going off of a lunar cycle rather than a solar calendar. So it also gives each like lunation, like what the full moon for that month is, which is cool. And so yeah, just this brief intro here, and then it's getting just right into the Celtic tree calendar itself and each of the Ogham letters and the tree that it corresponds with. So the first one is birch. So it gives a description of the tree itself, a little drawing of the tree itself, and then what the actual letter of the alphabet stands for, what holiday it corresponds with, if it falls on a significant holiday on the Wheel of the Year, and then a corresponding rune and what that rune means. It also gives animal totems for each one. I can't really say what they're basing the correspondences on exactly, other than just maybe, using animal correspondences and saying, does this sound similar to what the tree symbolizes and is associated with? And then it also gives an astrological sign associated with each one. So very informative, cool little breakdown at the beginning of each one. And then it talks about what that time corresponding with each tree or letter in the solar wheel or wheel of the year means in terms of just the cycle of the seasons, cycle of the years, and those energy cycles that correspond with just different periods of the year. And yeah, kind of then what that means for the tree and its associations. And then it gives, further insight onto the totems, guides, and deities associated that it gives at the beginning as far as the animal totems and astrological correspondences. Does some more deep dive into that. And then I think it also kind of does something similar for this book, where for each one it also gives like a guided meditation that you can follow to kind of familiarize yourself with each tree and its energies, which is interesting. And then for this one specifically, it has birch healing. So like how you can use each tree and that tree's magic and magical associations and properties for healing or like energy work, shadow work, all that good stuff. One thing that I thought was cool the first thing that I have marked here for birch is that it says, birch reminds us that we shed our skin yearly just as she sheds her bark, and suggests that you can find a piece of bark from the tree, and it can even be soaked, pressed, and flattened, and then you can write your intentions on it for the year or just for manifesting. You can keep it or you can burn it. I just thought that was something cool that I'm just going to file away for later in case I run into any birch trees. Sadly, where I live in Kornheim, they're actually not, I've noticed, not as common down here in the Corn Belt as they are once you start to get further north. I noticed when we went to like last gathering in Wisconsin, that as soon as we got started getting further north, that I started seeing more birch trees. So maybe they're just more of like a cold tolerant tree. But sadly, they're not as common where I'm at, which is sad because they're very pretty, and also I definitely associate them as well with goddess and healing and rebirth energy. So it just goes through each letter of the tree alphabet And as it goes through the Wheel of the Year and gives you a breakdown of each one and the different totems and guides associated, and gives you a guided meditation that you can follow for each one, which I really liked. And then, yeah, what like the properties of each one are. Like for the next one is Rowan. So instead of birch healing, for Rowan healing, it says Rowan offers protection from those you do not trust, or from those who have the power or to confuse or manipulate you. So yeah, just kind of some of what its more magical properties could be, as well as just like healing properties of the tree and its energies themselves. And just kind of compare it to this one really quick. Celtic Tree Rituals, on the other hand, well, it's formatted very similarly. It's also just a breakdown of the Ogham alphabet along with the Wheel of the Year. It goes a little bit more into the Wheel of the Year itself and each one of the Sabbats. And so what I found particularly useful about this book over, say, just this one, well, this kind of gives you more insight into the property of each tree itself and like what it can be used for like magic or divination. Celtic Tree Rituals actually also gives you a breakdown of suggested rituals that you can do either on a monthly basis for each tree as you go through the calendar. Specific rituals that you can do geared toward each tree, and then also like more specific bigger rituals that you can do for the solstices and those Sabbats that fall along the Wheel of the Year. So, and I've definitely ended up using some of those in some group rituals that I have done and organized and helped to lead. So yeah, I thought that this book was particularly useful for that, as someone that does participate in rituals outside of just solitary practice. But like with this one, for instance, which one does it start with? Let's see. Oh, okay. So it starts the same way. It still starts with birch as the first tree, and then gives you a breakdown of what it corresponds with. Also gives the animal totems, guides, and deities. But then instead of, it doesn't give a rune correspondence, it does give a holiday correspondence, and then it just goes right into a possible like ritual or ceremony that you can hold for each tree. But it does still give a guided meditation for each. I just think that the outline and verbiage of each guided meditation are different across each book. So yeah, those were the major differences that I noticed, is that this one actually goes more into like detailed, in-depth rituals that you can do with each tree, as opposed to just giving the meanings, correspondences, properties, and then a guided meditation for you to follow. So let's see, what else do I have marked off here? Ugh, I have cat furs all over my face. So yeah, it's probably going to be a little bit shorter of a live stream tonight, but I definitely just wanted to take the time to go over this book a little bit. And since it was kind of somewhat the same as this one, as far as just being a breakdown of the alphabet and its meanings, like not really a whole lot of new information for me to really review or go over for you guys in terms of that. And so I did kind of just skim through this one some more, and did kind of skip through ahead a little bit to read some of the correspondences with this time of year that we are in currently. And I think that is what I had ended up doing with this one when I first bought it. It took me a while to get all the way through it, because when I bought it, I just started reading it from the point of the book that like where I was at in the calendar year at the time. And so I was kind of like reading it from back to front, if you want to be technical. But let's see, what are we in right now? It's the 7th. So we just left the period from September 5th to October 2nd, which was Ingtal or reed, corresponding with the rune Ingwaz or the Frere rune, that harvest season rune, harvest season time. And then sharing with that month was Strife or Blackthorn. And now, we are in the period from October 3rd to the 30th of Ruiz, or Elder, which is cool. Elder, it says, to just give a small description. And then here on the next page here is the drawing of it. So it says, Elder is a small shrub of the honeysuckle family. They have dark green leaves with finely cut edges, large clusters of small white flowers, and black, purple, or red berries. I think the bushes planted, or shrubberies, if you will, planted out in front of my house are actually some type of elder. And we're actually in the period of time, year right now, where it's starting to produce those red berries, which I guess are elderberries. And so it says that this is an alum of corresponding to transformation, renewal, death and rebirth, and the passing of the soul from the physical realm to the spiritual, which definitely makes sense because we are in, like I said, spooky season, the month leading up to Halloween, Samhain, All Hallows Eve, that time of year when the veil is thinnest and all of the spirits from the other side can come back and visit with us and us with them and all that fun stuff. It gives a classification for this in terms of, I think each tree is kind of classified further in like Druidic tradition, kind of like almost like a caste system where we have like chieftains and then just like common everyday plants and then like peasant shrubs. So there's like classifications of like lesser and greater important trees, which is interesting. But the rune corresponding with elder is Rido, which is interesting, which is journey, right action, movement toward healing and change, priorities, shamanism, or the soul's journey. So I guess that could be why it's corresponding with this time of year. The totems and guides are cranes, storks, and the ibis, which I also associate personally with Njord, and the crone aspect of the goddess. Yeah, we're getting into that dark goddess time of year. And astrological sign corresponding is Libra from October 22nd to October 23rd. And it says that the key phrase for that sign is I balance. And it's a cardinal air sign of masculine polarity, which I said in my last tarot video that the Odin energy, I think, is also ramping up since he is a god leading the wild hunt and acting as a ferryman of souls and whatnot. And so it says that this month marks the last of the harvest and gathering of seeds that will be saved and planted next spring. It's a time to be grateful for the food we'll store in order to survive the winter, take stock of the year, compost whatever is left over, a time to be grateful to the ancestors for their blessings and gifts. And I think as we get up to that time when the veil is thinnest, it's definitely that time to be getting into more of that ancestor work because it's going to be, I think, easiest at this time of year to connect with that. And so it's also a time, therefore, to release any of their weaknesses, legacies, traumas, or unhealthy beliefs stored in our DNA and memories. Elder's theme is the end in the beginning and the beginning in the end. It is a great time for personal withdrawal, retrospection, and release. And I think this is also all corresponding with that fall tarot reading that I just did. That time to go inside and kind of, go within and start doing that shadow work. Focus inward on ourselves as we're going inward for the colder times of the year. And it says the preceding year can also be composted into energy that will fuel the new. The powers of death and rebirth are strong, and we're guided through the mystery of our own personal transformations, which is, definitely kind of what shadow work is all about. Elder is the threshold month, which I think is interesting because, like I said, it's planted at the threshold of my house, and I think it's common to find planted at a threshold of a house. And it says it is also a corridor. So this is the time to just take stock and review your year. The Celts considered elder trees witch trees, and it was believed that elder clan members or wise ones took up residence in an elder tree as a dryad. So that's interesting. These wise ones are the voices of our ancestors and can give you guidance. Take the time to listen. It's the time to honor our grandmothers for their years of experience and their wise blood, seek the knowledge of ancient ways, and reconnect with ancestry. And then, like I said, it gives corresponding totem, more information on the corresponding totems, guides, and deities, which in this case was cranes, storks, and ibises. It says, these wonderful birds are symbols for our soaring spirits. To the Celts, the sight of a crane foretold a new life or a death. I guess maybe that's where the whole correspondence of the stork bringing babies comes from. That's interesting. Cranes were the repository of the mystical moon wisdom of the Celts. The crane bag of the ancient Druids, which I think comes from a story where I can't remember which god it is, but one of the gods has a kind of magic bottomless bag that you can put anything into. And it's also the name of the bag that the ancient Druids therefore used to hold their charms, incantations, language, stories, myths, songs, ogham script, and runic symbols. Crane bag was also the term used for collective wisdom of the Druidic adepts. Cranes are closely related to the feminine principle and represent higher vision and use of elevated intellect. The great blue heron is a majestic bird found in the wetlands across North America and was of spiritual significance to several indigenous tribes. It also corresponds to the ibis-headed god Thoth in the Egyptian pantheon, who is a god of knowledge and wisdom. So it says many cultures hold cranes in high esteem due to their ritualistic approach to mating and territory defense. They also mate for life and have and are strong symbols of parental devotion and fidelity. So maybe that's where I get the Njord association with. I don't know why. It just gives me that kind of like, yeah, dad energy, wholesome dad energy. I don't know. But let's see. Oh, it says it does also make reference here to the belief that it might have been the images of the legs of a crane coming out behind them as they fly, which were studied and used to create the Ogham script in the first place. Yeah, it says that they would study the flight patterns of the birds, and like I said, I love me some auspices over here, and use the shifting patterns of their legs as a source of divination. And that many Celtic heroines also at one time assumed the shape of a crane. So yeah, that's really interesting. Just to kind of give you some further details on what you're likely to find in these books. And then some of the guided meditations were definitely very interesting and useful, and I think I will be incorporating into some personal rituals at least as we go through the wheel of the year here. And then it's just both of these books are definitely good resources if you are also kind of looking to study Ogham script. I believe if you go online, you can also go to the Irish Pagan School by Laura O'Brien, and they have some great resources, both free and like paid learning courses that you can go to learn these things, learn Ogham and learn Druidic traditions from an actual Irish pagan, which get it from the source, right? But for my intents and purposes here, while some of this is a little bit watered down and based on UPG and kind of throwing everything under that like wider Celtic umbrella that things just tend to get lumped under, I would say, as far as just giving you a good breakdown of some of the more magical properties and associations that we can glean from the Ogham alphabet and tree magic. Both of these books are definitely useful for that, but in terms of like the mythology and the actual traditions, like take everything with a grain of salt as always, because especially when it gets into the author does like sprinkle in a lot of her own personal experiences and UPGs throughout both books, which is totally fine. And like I said, both the rituals in this book I did find useful and I've adapted into my own practices, both solitary and group rituals that I've done. And so if you are looking for a book that can kind of help you with some of the same, I would say go with this one. Whereas if you're just looking for give me the Ogham alphabet and the trees and their meanings, then just go with this one. But yeah, I think I'm just going to leave this one off there because I didn't bring a drink with me this time and I've been talking for a while and I am parched. Plus, like I said, I still got like a lot of packing to do, even though we're only going out of town for 2 days. I still got to be like making some lists and checking them twice just to make sure that I don't forget anything. And especially because I've never been to a Ren Fair before, I have kind of like no idea what to expect. The only thing I have to go off of is reading Mercedes Lackey's Bedlam's Bard books back in the 90s, which start off taking place at a Ren Fair. But yeah, I'm like, I have no idea what to expect. So stay tuned. Maybe I'll do like a little video on that and my experiences. But for the most part, I'm planning to just go and enjoy myself and enjoy the day and enjoy the little out of town weekend trip. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this quick little book review. And until the next one, stay classy, pagans.